Mere moments away from lifting the Proven Summons Trophy in 2023, Brisbane fans had plenty to look forward to. They had a young gun team with a proven premiership winning halfback and a coach that was firmly ingrained in the culture and history of the club. 2024 was set to be their crowning moment. So what happened? Hey guys, Bergs here from The Casual Athlete, and before we get into what has happened to the Brisbane Broncos in the 2024 season, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week just for you guys, so if you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our new content, it helps us bring out videos like this and it helps us out even more than you can imagine. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. It's unfair to critique a team without discussing what they did, or in Brisbane's case, didn't have this season. The recruitment and retention department at Brisbane needs some serious work after these couple of blunders. Keenan Palasia, Kurt Capewell, Tom Flegler, and especially Herbie Farnworth were some of the biggest losses for Brisbane this year. Palasia, while not talked about with the kind of gravitas that some of the other guys are listed on this list, he still played 20 games for Brisbane last year and was a big part of the bench rotation. Kurt Capewell was a perplexing move to say the least, considering Brisbane's lack of depth at the second row position. He's a proven Origin player and premiership winner. This one felt more like salary cap pressure and the pressure to re-sign younger, more up-and-coming talent like Reece Walsh, Ezra Mam, Katoni Staggs and Selwyn Cobbo. But Kurt, as I spoke about, is extremely experienced, so this to me was a very underrated loss. Tom Flegler, while he hasn't been on the field as much this season for the Dolphins, you could say he was developing one of the best three-man teams with Haas and Carrigan last year. And along with Keenan Palasia, losing him really dented the middle forward rotation for the Broncos. And Herbie Farnworth, this guy was awesome for the Broncos last season. He was one of the best centres in the world in my opinion, and his tough carries out of trouble and post-contact yardage have been sorely missed. But the Broncos are always known as one of those clubs that everybody wants to play for, so surely they made some signings to keep up with these losses. But you'd be wrong. They really failed to sign anyone of first-grade talent quality. They did bring in Fletcher Baker, but in my opinion, he was struggling to make the Roosters 17 each and every week, and they had quite a fair few injuries in the middle forwards last year. The Broncos instead opted to back some of their homegrown talent, which I get, but surely you would do everything you can to keep the team that made the grand final together, as it's important for the years moving forward. Farnworth, Flegler, Capewell and Palasia have all been part of the fabric of the club for the past 4 seasons and have really been part of the driving force that saw them make it all the way to the grand final. Without them, some of the key areas that Brisbane was so good at last year have been significantly lacking. Whilst I know stats aren't everybody's cup of tea, I believe they provide us a decent benchmark for seeing how your team is travelling over the course of a season, and some of these stats don't paint a great picture for the Brisbane Broncos. In 2023, the Broncos finished second in post-contact meters and also second in kick return meters. Their set completion rate, while it's not great but not terrible, they did lead the league in errors last season, but we'll get to that in a moment. Now take a look at the same stats from the 2024 season. They currently sit in 12th for post-contact meters, and guess where Herbie Farnworth finished amongst all players in 2023? That's right, he was 4th. In kick return meters, they sit 8th, and with Herbie leaving, Selwyn Cobbo was forced to move from the wing into that centre position, and he finished 6th among wingers for kick return meters last year. It's a bit like robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Oh, and as for that completion rate that I mentioned a little bit earlier, they finished 8th last year, and this year they sit dead last. This kind of feeds the narrative that some of their younger players, like Reece Walsh, who led the league in errors last season, isn't being held responsible for the mistakes that he's making when they don't pay off. He's a brilliant young attacking player, and I love the freedom that he plays with out on the park. But some of the mistakes that he makes are somewhat juvenile at this stage of his career, and no doubt he will be looking to fix them up moving forward. But you might be thinking, Bergs, the Broncos were an extremely good attacking team last year, and they just blew teams off the park with their high-powered offense. And you'd be right. Last year, the Broncos finished first in line breaks and second in offloads, providing a ton of attacking opportunities that led to them having the second best attack in the competition. But fast forward to this season and it's a completely different story. They currently sit 10th in the league in total line breaks this season, and they are dead last in offloads, having lost their third and fifth best offloaders from last season in Herbie Farnworth and Thomas Flegler. And as for their defense, while it was fantastic last season, this year, the attitude and the desire to be able to stick to tackles has really gone wayward. The Broncos this season have often lacked the necessary tools and attitude to keep teams contained, blowing a fair few leads this year and giving teams a quick start. This leads into my next point about the coach, Kevin Walters. Coaches, whether you love them or hate them, are responsible for the way your team lines up week in and week out. And Kevy has definitely come under fire this season. He's into his 4th year as Broncos coach, but the question still remains, is he the right man to lead them to a premiership for the first time in 18 years? Well, it's not going to happen this year, but let's take a look at how he's done in that time span. Fresh off the Anthony Seibold era, Walters inherited an absolute mess, but every analyst that I saw said that this Broncos side had some of the best young talent coming through, and I 100% agree with them. After 2021, where they only managed to get 7 wins, you expected a general improvement, and we definitely got one. In 2022, they were sitting in 4th place with 6 rounds to go, but narrowly missed out on the finals, finishing 9th. More on what I think about that fade off in a moment. In 2023, as we know, they were minutes away from securing a premiership, but Nathan Cleary. And this season, they've really not turned up in big games. They've tried to play the exact same way, but there seems to be nobody holding these young players accountable for their mistakes, and that falls on the coach, in my opinion. Especially when your captain and very experienced halfback is out of the side for almost half the season. Walters, in his 96 games as Broncos coach, has won 48 and lost 47. Yes, I understand that is a positive record, but hear me out for a sec. If you ask me, his man management skills and message delivery need some work. Coming out to a press conference in what is possibly one of their most important games of the year, where they're fighting to stay in the 8 and saying to the media that they were flat. It just tells me that he really doesn't know where the real issues lie and what really needs to be fixed. No doubt he'll learn from this season, but the Broncos are a powerhouse club that demand good results. I just don't know if Kevy has the credentials to be able to utilise the talent on this roster in the proper way. Obviously, injuries play a big part in any team's season, and the Broncos have certainly had a number of injuries this year. But it's the caliber of player that these injuries are happening to that has really cost them at certain points this season. The big one, of course, is Adam Reynolds, and he's missed a whopping 11 games this year. Honestly, I think the Broncos are questioning at this point why they gave a 35-year-old injury-prone halfback an extra year on his current contract. Other notable injuries include Reece Walsh, who fractured his face earlier in the season. Payne Haas missed 5 games earlier in the season, including games against Penrith and the Storm, which coincided with Reynolds' injury. He's now also picked up a Liz Frank injury, meaning he will miss the remaining 5 games of the year. I've also highlighted Brendan Piakura's missed games, as he had some pretty big shoes to fill this season, but has spent some time out, which forced Brisbane to put in a less than ideal option. The other person who deserves a mention is Jesse Arthurs, and he was phenomenal for Brisbane in the back end of last year. Unfortunately, this season he spent 5 games on the sideline and really has struggled to recapture that form. The reason I've highlighted these injuries is the fact that they've coincided with each other more often than not. This season, the Broncos really haven't had their best 13 on the park week in and week out. Like Parramatta this season, relying so heavily on one player who's so attached to the success of whether your team wins or loses each week is not a winning formula. Let's take Penrith for example. Nathan Cleary has missed 11 games this season, and Penrith have gone 7 wins and 4 losses in those games. proving that other players in the side need to step up in order to carry the team forward. But we just haven't seen that kind of consistency from the Brisbane Broncos this season. I think the Broncos can definitely bounce back from their efforts this season. They have the talent and youth, and if paired with the right amount of experience, I'm sure they can get back to the promised land. But there are some questions that need answering. For me, their biggest problems are their second row depth, their coaching, and their attitude at the present time. Who knows what 2025 will bring on. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you want to see more content like this, please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our latest content. If you fancy yourself a rugby league writer, we are currently taking admissions, so hit us up in our Instagram DMs for your chance to be published on our website. And I'll catch you on the next one.